Hey, welcome back, everybody. Great to see you. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful Friday out there and a final day of January. And it feels like this January has lasted quite some time, but tomorrow is finally the start of February, and then Sunday, Groundhog Day, and then we'll continue onwards through the month. And I'll tell you, I got my eyes on a couple different storm systems really starting next week through the start of February. One right around, we'll say, Wednesday, Thursday of next week, and then another potential a little closer to 10 days out that could impact a pretty highly populated part of the country, and we'll talk about that in today's video. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. It's a great way to stay up to date as we continue to track whatever is on the way here through what has been so far a very active winter and a little bit of a lull right now. But again, I got my eyes on the first kind of week or two of February that could once again get pretty interesting, and we'll even talk about kind of later on in the month and see if more areas can get back in on that winter weather before all is said and done. Alrighty, folks, let's go ahead and dive right on into the data and start discussing what we're seeing out there. Now, what you're seeing right now, this is satellite imagery, and not hard to find where we already have two storm systems across the country. One very pronounced storm system really parked right over Missouri right now near the St. Louis area and continuing to push eastward throughout the day today, bringing the chance for some snow and some rain and even a little bit of severe weather potentially before this storm finally exits off the eastern seaboard. And the good news, this one's moving pretty quickly, so it's not going to be a headache for much longer. It should be out of here really by tonight and into tomorrow. However, that sets up the stage for our next storm system back up here near the PNW, already bringing all sorts of rain, wind, and snow into the west coast, and will continue to do so. And eventually, a piece of this is going to break off and once again cross the country later this week and closer to Sunday. We'll talk about that as well in today's video. Now, let's take a look at radar imagery. Is all this kind of line up? Well, sure enough, it does. And let's start out east where we have plenty of action ongoing. We've got some snow up into Maine. We've got kind of the mixed precipitation back here into Toronto, back down near London, Ontario, across Lake Erie, seeing some of that freezing drizzle, and then rain over land itself with some icy conditions mixing in here to portions of New York State from Ithaca back down to the Scranton area of Pennsylvania, including Syracuse and Utica. Let me know what you're seeing kind of falling from the sky in that area. But other than that, folks, it's all rain here from Iowa into the Chicago metro, back through the mid-Atlantic, from DC, Richmond, Virginia Beach, even raining back towards Nashville, Knoxville, Huntsville, even really much of the Gulf Coast down towards the Mobile area, seeing some of those showers and storms today. And that's also where we could see a couple of strong storms down this way. You can see where we still have kind of a leftover little baby squall line from last night. That could try to reinvigorate a little bit this afternoon. Not super worried about it, but definitely something we will watch throughout the day today. Now, that's the East Coast system. Well, out west, it's no picnic either. Look at all this mountain snow from the Cascades, even into the northern Rockies. Yeah, it's coming down good out here. We've got rain in Seattle, Eugene, Portland, and then even back down towards the Eureka area. Some gusty, rainy, kind of just a raw winter day out there. But you go towards the mountains again here through the Cascades, into the mountains of Oregon, seeing some of that blue showing up on radar, indicating that snow falling. And that'll be a common theme here, I think, through the next kind of bit that we forecast out west, this positive, or rather this negative P&A pattern finally catching up to that La Nina we've been waiting on, and really starting to see a more stereotypical La Nina winter out there with kind of cold and snowy conditions. And you can see that on our current alerts map. Check it out. We've got plenty of purple and pink showing up out here into the northern Rockies, into the Pacific Northwest, even northern portions of California, getting in on the fun. But not to leave out our folks in the east, even got some winter weather advisories here into New York State, back down towards northern New Jersey, up towards northeastern Pennsylvania, where we're going to see some winter weather this afternoon. And I think also even likely to see some winter weather even further north of there, where we're not really seeing much show up right now. But Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont going to get some snow this evening and into the overnight of tonight, although it may not be quite enough for them to issue the advisories. It takes a lot up there for the National Weather Service to issue something, but we'll see if they do at some point today. Now, other than that, just some rain and some fog here where you see the green and the gray boxes on your map there. That's where those more spring-like conditions are clashing with that winter weather, and we're seeing, again, that kind of foggy, rainy, misty kind of day out there so far, but again, clearing through the day west to east across the country, and that will definitely help to make things a little bit brighter by the evening for some of us And if not by then by tomorrow, we'll see much nicer conditions. Now, here's the setup. We've got this big area of vorticity, storm energy, whatever you want to call it, over the central part of the country, from Oklahoma, Texas, back up into Kansas. And basically, well, it's just going to move on out of here. Like the storm itself, what is creating the storm is also going to eventually kind of scoot off to the east. And you can see that here through this afternoon and evening. We'll continue moving it ahead. This is about probably where we're at now, depending on when you're watching this. Like I said, the center of the storm right over Missouri, kind of in the St. Louis area, and that lines up with our energy map here pretty well, and all of that diffluence out in front of it. That's why we're getting all that rainfall. We're getting plenty of lift or ascent at the surface, as we like to call it with the fancy scientific terms. Basically, the air is rising, and that is leading to rain out here, and that will continue through the evening, moving eastbound across the Ohio Valley into the northeast. And it's at this point that some of that cold air, due to this piece of energy up to the north, combined with our storm system, are going to overlap, and we will get a band of some snowfall this evening that could accumulate upwards of maybe 3 to 4 inches in some of those higher terrains, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But then that kicks on out of here, and we are all good, at least in the east, by Saturday morning and afternoon. Out west, different story as that next storm system begins to roll on through. So let's time it out for you. We'll start here again in the east, and we've got brand new model data here. This is the high resolution rapid refresh. We'll move it on ahead into time. Let's get it to about this early afternoon time frame. All rain really for most folks. Again, watching a slight potential for this squall line down here to get a little bit stronger. Could try to strengthen up enough to get some lightning and maybe some small hail or gusty winds out of that through the southeast. Not a huge concern today, but again, something we'll watch and keep an eye on. To the north, just a good old moderate to heavy rainfall here through the Ohio Valley into the northeast. But as we go into tonight, look at that snow beginning to break out into upstate New York, the Adirondacks, back down towards the kind of northern Finger Lakes there, and then eventually later on tonight, as we approach the midnight hour, beginning to snow pretty good into Vermont, New Hampshire, the hills of kind of western Massachusetts there into southern Maine. And this nice little band of snow definitely going to, give you a good couple hours of moderate snowfall. Now, like I said, this is a quick moving storm, so it's not going to be a major nor'easter or anything like that, but we will have at least what I would consider notable snowfall accumulations of 3, 4, maybe even 5 or 6 inches in some places, and then some back-end snow showers even into portions of Ohio, maybe into the Pittsburgh area, Scranton, raining along I-95, really an all-rain event for you, unfortunately. This evening and overnight tonight, some wet snow could try to mix into the Boston area, but anywhere south of there, going to be rain. And then check this out. This is 8 a.m. tomorrow. We're done, folks. We are back to nice weather after that front moves on through. Going to see maybe a slight cool down tomorrow afternoon, but honestly, not a huge cold air mass behind this storm to kind of usher in any kind of Arctic air, at least very far south. It should stay relatively nice. This is Saturday afternoon and evening, and we stay nice, but you'll notice up into the north, here through the northern plains and into the Great Lakes, another disturbance starts working on through. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, let's break down snowfall totals for this first storm system. Like I said, not a big one, but I do think areas of especially the higher terrains of southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, we could get a good 3-4 inch snow event out of this. The down east areas of Maine, probably going to be 2 to 4 inches, really just in general. This swath right here, going to be 2 to 4 inches plus, we'll say. Higher elevations could get to that 4 to 6 range, so not a big deal by any means, but definitely some snow that is going to accumulate. You'll get a nice fresh layer of snow onto the ground, and then even some light accumulations back towards the Cleveland area, not out of the question, but impacts would be minimal there. Same story for Boston, some light accumulations, upwards of an inch potentially, especially in the northern suburbs, likely not causing big concerns or big problems though. All right, now let's talk about what's happening out west and what our next storm system is going to do. So we talked about the east for today and into tonight, and then tomorrow, nicer conditions. Well, check what's happening out here. We've got just wave after wave of energy. You see all of this kind of orange and kind of red on your map, and let me draw in a different color so you can see it a little bit clearer here. Right in this area, this is basically a wave train of storm energy crossing from the Pacific, hitting the Rockies, and eventually getting east of the Rockies. And that little disturbance I showed you into kind of of this area of Michigan, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas, well, that's a little piece of energy that's going to actually make it all the way from the Pacific over the Rockies, and then finally kind of begin to produce some active weather over the northern plains and into the Great Lakes by about Saturday afternoon and evening. You can kind of see it showing up here on our map. And then we'll keep on going, folks, and it's just more of the same. It's not hard to find. It's kind of like a fire hose of energy right off the Pacific into the northern tier of the country, while meanwhile, down south, really not much happening. We're quiet from Texas through the Carolinas, Florida, even kind of the mid-Atlantic area, and I would argue at least the southern half of the Ohio Valley. Not a whole lot going on through the weekend, but that could change later on into time, and we'll talk about that. But just get the idea here of just a train of energy through the northern tier of the country. That's the name of the game over, I think, at least the next 4 or 5 days. You can see that here on our future cast as well from the NAM. Look at that mountain snow into the Seattle area, back down into Oregon, Northern California. You get through the Northern Rockies, going to get some impressive snow out of this. This is this evening, seeing that snow continue. And I'm going to kind of breeze on through this, folks, because it's more of the same. Just a fire hose of moisture and lift, creating plenty of Northern Rocky snow, even down into Northern California, Oregon, Washington. Again, our friends out here, let me know if you're watching from this area, probably has been wondering or have been wondering, where's the snow? We were promised this La Nina. Well, where is it? Well, finally, I think going to catch on up to ourselves here as we go into this weekend and into really the entire first week of February. This is all the way into Monday afternoon, and you'll notice just the wave train continues with plenty of snow. And check out the snowfall totals, folks. This is over the next 3 days. Yeah, a lot of very bright colors on your screen on the right-hand side there, or I guess this right for you. You can see the key there showing that higher end snowfall potential. These mountains just outside of Seattle, folks. I mean, we're talking 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of snow near the Darrington area on southward through North Bend. You can kind of see the Cascade Range here towards Morton and into Trout Lake, and just really all the way down into Oregon, Northern California. Plenty of snow on the way. Yeah, you get the idea. A lot of it. Even British Columbia, if you're watching up here, plenty of snow in those higher terrains. So if you've got a ski trip planned or anything like that, well, you've got the right pattern here for it. Here even into Idaho, into the Yellowstone area, and then won't forget our friends down into the Sierra Nevadas of California. A couple of feet of snow very likely on those higher peaks. But overall, a lot of snow here in the near term. Now, let's move it east here. Again, like I said, some of that energy going to break off and cross into the eastern half of the country. Well, here it is, Saturday afternoon. There's that signal for some unsettled weather and some snowfall into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, specifically the upper peninsula of Michigan and northern Wisconsin. Check it out, though. This is a nice little area of snow. This is overnight Saturday into Sunday. We've had a lot of very light events in this area. I think this one could be a little bit more of a moderate event by the time we keep on going ahead into time, especially through kind of eastern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and into the UP of Michigan. Going to see some nice snow overnight Saturday into Sunday morning. That keeps on going and eventually gets into the northeast, and this could also produce some good snow in this area through Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York, potentially Massachusetts, maybe as far south as Boston and Connecticut. We'll see. This would be, again, overnight Sunday into Monday at this time frame, and then kind of gets on out of here. Again, a quick hitting event, but look what's behind it, another wave of winter precipitation. I told you that's the name of the game here through at least the next probably 5 to 7 days. Now, how much snow out here from this system? Well, again, I think not a bad storm at all. You can kind of see these areas up near Duluth into the International Falls. I believe Hibbing is how we say the name of that town, into Minnesota, and then you get into Marquette, and then even down into the Green Bay area. A nice swath of snow here. The mean showing about 4 to 5 inches. It's going to be a sharp gradient, though, so the further south you go towards Washua, Rice Lake, Green Bay, and kind of these areas of that corridor, even into the Minneapolis area, probably a lighter event, maybe more 1 to 3, but you get towards the UP, Rhinelander, Park Falls, Ashland. I think that's where we have the potential for 4, 5, maybe even 6 inches of snow, and then the Eli area really going to cash in here, and even the Two Harbors area of Minnesota. And then you get a little bit further ahead into time, and check this out in the northeast. Yeah, not a bad looking storm for you as well. I will move it even ahead a little bit further to get the full storm in view. And we've got the potential here into Maine, back down towards New Hampshire, Vermont, maybe the Boston area, trying to pick up on a little bit of snow out of this, not out of the question. So definitely going to be the next little storm system we watch. Now, Again, we've talked about these little miniature events outside of what's happening out west. Obviously, that's more of a prolonged storm system, or I guess we'll say a train of storm systems. Now, what about the next big storm in the east? I think a lot of folks wondering that. We've had a little bit of a lull. Yeah, we had today's storm, but that wasn't a big winter weather producer or even too big of a severe weather producer. Well, I'll tell you, I think as we go into the February 4th, 5th, and 6th time frame, that's when we're going to run the potential for the next big one, we'll say. Now, here's the pattern leading up to that. I told you, it's going to be a sharp gradient of kind of just a wave train here, and here's kind of the reason, or our culprit, big upper level low. Imagine it kind of like a gun with shells just lining up around it. As it spins around, it's just firing off round after round, kind of along this corridor. That might not be the best analogy, but you kind of get the idea here. Right along this line is where we have the current storm track. That's why we're getting these little pieces of energy to break off and move through the northern plains, the northern Great Lakes, and even into portions of the Northeast, producing that snow. Well, I think as we go later into next week, the first week of February there, what's going to happen is, well, one, a big ridge is going to build in the east, and I'll tell you, we haven't been talking a lot about it on the channel, but it is going to get borderline toasty down here into the deep south. You're talking spring fever for sure. Potential highs in the 80s through the deep south, maybe 60s and 70s through portions of the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley especially. Yeah, it's going to be warm. We'll talk about those temperatures here at the end of the video, but what this is going to do is set up a bit of a boundary. So you see that warm air surging north, while at the same time, we've got this big pocket of cold air trapped up into the west and into Canada. And where these two kind of interact and overlap, that's where we could run into some icy, kind of snowy concerns here as we go into the middle of next week. And I think as we go a little bit later on into time, right around here, you'll notice we get closer towards about 7 to 10 days from now, that blue line tries to sneak a bit further south, and then the boundary ends up becoming a little bit more along where that pink line is. And again, wherever this kind of clash of air masses sets up, that's where we're going to run the potential for an impactful winter storm or multiple impactful winter storms. And you can see that here as we go into that 10-day time frame. And then we go later on into February. Look at how it tries to sneak south there, and then eventually gets shoved back west. The cold air does, and we kind of once again become more of a northeast to southwest oriented kind of battleground zone compared to just east-west oriented zone there. So we'll see how that plays out. But either way, as long as these air masses are clashing, we're going to run the risk of some big storms. And you can see that here, latest GFS model, and I'll show you the European as well. Here's the Saturday, Sunday storm bringing some snow. And then we get a little bit of a lull, at least in the east. Again, out west, it's still snowing like crazy in the mountains and raining in the valleys. However, look what happens by this time frame. This is overnight of the 4th into the 5th. And we've got a piece of energy working through, and you see these kind of pink purple colors. Yeah, that's ice through the Ohio Valley, that warm air kind of overriding that cold air at the surface, and we're beginning to run into some icy concerns. And we'll keep it ahead. This becomes a big storm on the GFS model, and this is less than a week away. This is next Wednesday, Thursday. Folks, this would bring high impacts for ice and snow into portions of the Northeast, the Great Lakes, and then on into even portions of eastern Canada. And you're thinking, all right, we're done. No, that's just the start of the pattern. And then check this out. By the time we get to about 10 days, and this is the second day in a row, the models have shown this, showing that potential for another storm system around the 9th, the 10th of February into the Northeast, the Great Lakes. And then that one could bring more of a prolonged period of cold behind it. We'll see, obviously well out there. But that's the GFS European model, folks. Not far from that same idea. Here's the middle of next week's solution. Now further north, it gets the ice up into the Midwest, into eastern Canada, into a little bit further into the Northeast. That's probably, I think, a little closer to reality is this solution compared to what the GFS is showing. But both have the storm system and a high impact one with ice and snow, and then behind that, also showing that secondary storm right around the 9th or so. And this one on the European is a pretty big storm for the Northeast, including maybe the Boston, New York City, northern New Jersey, maybe Philadelphia area. We'll see, but definitely a concern for the interior. Jury out for the I-95. We'll kind of wait and see what happens with that one as well. And then the storm track gets further south and does it again right around 10 days or so from now. So you kind of get the idea here. The pattern becoming a little bit more loaded for winter weather once we enter February. Again, we kind of ended January a little bit more quiet. Will that last? I don't think so. Here's another reason why I tend to believe it's about to get pretty active. This is our ensemble showing that freezing rain potential, and notice the signal building. Here's that first storm signal right around the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Yeah, it's a big ice signal through the Northeast, the Great Lakes. That one kind of calms down a little bit, and then we get another boost of an ice signal around the 9th, the 10th, and then kind of that icy signal stays in the east for a while as these air masses continue to clash. Now, what about snow? I know you don't want the ice, you want the snow. Well, here's the chance of that happening. Here's the Saturday, Sunday kind of clipper, if that's what you want to call it, here into the Great Lakes and then into the Northeast, and then a little bit of a lull until that 4th, 5th time frame. And you'll notice the snow signal to the north of the ice signal. So if the ice happens kind of right into this area, then to the north is where we'll see the snow. It's kind of just the layers of how these storm systems end up playing out. And I think this is going to be a pretty likely scenario. But remember, I'll go ahead and draw on the map here. This is where the snow is. But if you count the snow and the ice, this would be a big area of winter weather that we would need to monitor right around 5-6 days from now. And then you get to the next time frame and another big snow signal, this one more favorable for the Northeast and I-95. Right around the 9th or 10th of February. So you get the idea. It's looking more active for sure here. My friends in the South are wondering, well, what about us? I think through at least February 10th, if you're south of really this line right here, you're out of luck in terms of snow. But when we talk about temperatures, don't be too sad because it's going to feel wonderful out there. You're going to be on the warm side of these clashing air masses. And it's going to feel borderline like spring. And then as we go later into February, maybe 2-3 weeks from now, this is well out of time, I think there's a higher likelihood that we can get some sort of winter weather back down into areas somewhat far south, we'll say south of the Ohio Valley. Again, that's well out in time and nothing to kind of really even track right now, just a time frame to watch for the pattern to become maybe more favorable for you. We'll see. We'll continue to monitor it. Now, let's talk about temperatures. This is going to be, I think, a bigger story for folks in the south who aren't seeing the snow. This is this afternoon already, spring fever happening through much of the east. As we go through this weekend and into early next week, I think this shows that temperature boundary pretty well. This would be leading up to the next storm system. Again, that warm air mass to the south and that cold air mass to the north, that interaction between the two, that's going to bring the storm systems, the snow, the ice, and look down south at spring fever. This is next Wednesday. We're talking temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above, what they should be this time of year. And then to the north in Montana, we're talking temperatures 30 to 40 degrees below. So you talk about a temperature gradient. Yeah, this is a prime battleground area for some sort of big storm to form on the ensembles, showing that big temperature gradient. That's going to kick up the wind as well, and spring fever just does not leave through at least the first week of February down through the deep south, but you'll notice eventually this cold air and these storm systems try to kind of beat down that warmer push of air, and it's at this time frame, closer to the 10th through the 15th or so, that we'll have a higher end chance of snow into the I-95 and into areas of the mid-Atlantic and potentially portions of, I'll say, the upper southeast. And you can see very cold air continues to stay locked into the Pacific Northwest. You're going to continue that wonderful ski season. Now, what about these temperatures? Obviously, I told you how above average. What does that mean? These are forecasted high temperatures next Thursday, February 6th. I mean, we're already going for near 80 in places like Columbia, South Carolina, through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, even the 70s into Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and then you go up north, we're only getting into the single digits in North Dakota. So you get the idea, folks. It's going to be a pretty big clash coming up ahead as we begin to start thinking about slowly changing seasons. Still pretty firmly in winter here, February is, but the way the past couple Februarys have gone, it's hard to remember that February is in fact a winter month. But you're going to feel it up north again. And then down south, the question will be, is this going to be fake spring, or will this maybe be the start of a longer term trend of warmer temperatures? I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Alrighty, folks, again, if you haven't already, I will ask, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Also, let me know what you think Punxsutawney Phil is going to find, if I don't smack my microphone, that is, come this Sunday. We'll see if he kind of, maybe the spring fever might get to him and he might agree with an early spring. We'll find out. With that said, though, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you all next time.